Greetings and salutations. Thank you for being willing to seek out the truth and find it. Seek and ye shall find. If you want to understand how the world works, seek and ye shall find. Those aren't empty words, it's the truth. Now, if you follow the news at all, you know that we came to being within 10 minutes of a war with Iran that would have resulted in more than 1 million people dying. Okay? The planes were in the air, the attack had been approved. We don't know if it was approved by Donald Trump. Goodness knows he has enough psychopaths around him. He called it off 10 minutes before the attack was about to take place. We don't even know if he was completely aware of the fact that this attack had been approved, but he was the one who called it off. Kudos to him for calling it off, but it shouldn't have gotten that close. We really don't need to see another 1 million people, civilians, die as a result of U.S. foreign policy. I understand. Millionaires become billionaires every time there's another war. Money is transferred from the middle class to the upper class through the military-industrial complex. The money doesn't actually leave the United States. It's simply siphoned out of the middle class to the upper class. That's the only reason the United States goes to war. The United States is currently bombing 7 nations off the face of the earth, not because those nations have ever attacked America. They never wanted to attack America, and they couldn't have even if they wanted to. Nevertheless, they're being blown off the face of the earth because this makes millionaires into billionaires, and they are very generous in how they share that money with members of Congress. Okay, I'm going to go into that into some depth. I want to start off by dealing with this Iran issue. Okay, first of all, Iran did not mine the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, I think I can prove that. Most of the world believes that already. There is no reason why Iran would call upon the United States to destroy them. They don't want to be destroyed. They don't want war with the United States. They're not going to invite war with the United States by mining the Strait of Hormuz. There are 2 countries that desperately want to incite a war between the United States and Iran. Okay, those 2 nations are Israel and Saudi Arabia. I suspect, given the incompetence of the mining operation, it was probably Saudi Arabia that conducted it. Okay, I'll tell you why. First of all, everything Saudi Arabia does is grossly incompetent, and I can quote American politicians in that regard. When Saudi Arabia ordered the murder of that Washington Post journalist, and they carved him up in their embassy in Turkey, there was a cover-up after that. Donald Trump described the cover-up as the worst, stupidest cover-up in the history of cover-ups. Everything they did just made it more obvious that they had murdered the Washington Post journalist. Everything they do is incompetent. They spend a fortune on their military. They have a vast military, vast security intelligence network. Yet, ask any American general, and they've said this on television, Saudi Arabia couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. And they prove that every day in Yemen. They have a massive superiority over Yemen, and yet Yemen, with very little support, some support from Iran, that's about it, they've been able to fend off the Saudis. Saudis can't do anything right, but they do have money, and that gives them power. All right. Now we know 18 million barrels of oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz every day. The West is very dependent on that. If Iran does anything to mess with that, it gives the US of A and other nations the opportunity to wipe Iran off the face of the earth. Does Iran wish to be wiped off the face of the earth? Do we really have to ask that question? Of course they do not. They have done everything in their power to avoid that coming war. Okay? As far as the nuclear agreement, they followed the nuclear agreement to a fault. They followed it. The United States withdrew from it. The United States has been doing everything imaginable to try and incite war with Iran. Now you might ask, why is that? Well, I've asked that question myself because it's not entirely clear. Yes, there are some strange people in the Trump administration. Jared Kushner comes to mind. He has a very close relationship with Netanyahu. Israel and Saudi Arabia desperately want to destroy Iran for their own reasons. They won't say what those reasons are. Donald Trump has bought into this. Donald Trump will say things like, Iran abuses its own people. Iran supports terrorism. Okay, well, let's look at that for a second. Here's a fact you might not know. There are more Jews living in Iran than any other country in the Middle East, save Israel. In fact, there's quite a lot of immigration by Jews to Iran. And you'd think if Iran was going to persecute somebody, wouldn't it be the Jews? Yet the Jews love living in Iran. They're happy in Iran. They're not persecuted at all. There's more synagogues in Iran than you'd find anywhere outside of Israel. Why is that? Well, they're happy there. I don't know why. Well, they're certainly not being persecuted. Iran has elections. You'd never find an election in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is known for being one of the #1 top sponsors of terrorism throughout the world. They don't have any democracy whatsoever. They're crueler to their own people than anybody you could shake a stick at, but they do spend a lot of money on U.S. military equipment. They do donate a lot of money, tons of money, to the campaigns of U.S. politicians. Saudi Arabia can do no wrong in the eyes of U.S. politicians. Iran doesn't contribute any money to the U.S. military-industrial complex, and they certainly do not donate to U.S. politicians, so they're seen as evil. Okay, let's look at the accusation of Iran supporting terrorism. This is a fascinating accusation. This is a fascinating accusation. If you eliminated U.S. foreign policy and you eliminated Saudi Arabian foreign policy from the world, you would see suddenly 95% of all the terrorism would disappear. That tells you a lot about who's supporting terrorism and who isn't. So for the U.S. and Saudi Arabia to point fingers at Iran and accuse them of terrorism, that's a fascinating thing. That takes hypocrisy to a level not seen before. But let's look at that. Let's look at how Iran is supporting terrorism. Okay, Iran sends money to support the Palestinians. Okay, now to a Washington politician, if Palestinian kids have food to eat, have schools to go to, well, that's terrible. All those kids are no good. They're just a bunch of terrorists. They got brown skin, they're Muslim. We need to eradicate them off the face of the earth. If you're funding them, you're funding terrorism, I'll tell you that. Okay, so Iran sends money to the Palestinians. So, okay, let's look at that as one thing. Iran is doing three things that U.S. politicians don't like. They're supporting the Palestinians, they're helping to protect the Palestinians. Okay, let's say that's supporting terrorism. That's one thing. Now, in the Iraq War, when the U.S. disbanded the Iraqi military, this created ISIS, okay? Now you would think the U.S. politicians would see that as a bad thing, but they actually use ISIS as a means to forward their foreign policy, whether it's destroying Gaddafi in Libya or destroying Syria. They use ISIS for that purpose. There was a branch of ISIS called al-Nusra. The U.S. arms them, supplies them, trains them, and fights shoulder to shoulder with them to destroy Syria. Syria invited Iran. We're about to get wiped out. We're going to be another Libya. We're going to be another failed state. Anything you can do to help us out? Iran did send assistance to Syria. They did help to fend off ISIS and al-Nusra in Syria. They were invited to do so. Oh, Iran, they're funding terrorism again. Syria's no good, they're helping Syria. Now there's two examples. They're feeding Palestinians and they're saving Syria from our best efforts to destroy Syria. That's two examples of Iran supporting terrorism. Well, that doesn't really sound like supporting terrorism, but I'm not a Washington politician, so maybe I don't get it. Let's look at the third way Iran is quote-unquote supporting terrorism. Okay, Saudi Arabia said, and they've been very vocal about it. They're not smart people. They're very vocal about it. They want a complete genocide. They want to eradicate these Yemenis. They want to starve them out, wipe them out, kill them all. This is essentially an ego trip for Saudi Arabia. Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the world. And we've seen about half of all their kids starve to death, get blown to pieces. All of this with full support of the U.S. government. Again, the Saudis can do no wrong. They want money, they want assistance, they want U.S. satellites to guide their targeting, make sure they wipe out the entire Yemeni people. This is what Saudi wants, this is what Saudi gets. Okay, they give a lot of money to U.S. politicians. They spend a lot of money on U.S. equipment. Whether you're Democratic politicians, Republican politicians, they love the Saudis, 100%. The world's #1 supporter of terrorism. If somebody's blowing up a grocery store, if someone's doing a massacre in New Zealand or Sri Lanka, you can be sure it was organized and funded by Saudi. But that doesn't prevent U.S. politicians from being in love with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia can do no wrong in the eyes of U.S. politicians. Now, when I say U.S. politicians, I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. Okay? They have completely sold out America on all levels. And you know that they have. But you've been told you can't vote for an honest politician. If you vote for a third party or a fourth party, it's a wasted vote because they're not going to win. Yes, you might get 40 or 50 honest people into Congress, but what good is that? They'll be so outnumbered there's no point. If you vote Democrat or Republican, you might get good things coming your way to your constituency because you did. It's not a wasted vote, and you get to affect who's going to be the next president. Well, I say that's a self-defeating perspective. Now, if you look at who's an honest politician, I can think of two in Washington. Okay, two young women, didn't have any money, didn't have a lot of political experience. Okay, I think of Ilhan Omar, I think of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, whether you like them or not, they came into office and they're telling the truth. This created a firestorm of opposition. Worst thing you can do in Washington, worst thing you can be accused of is telling the truth, because that interferes with the gravy train. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. These are two women, turned Washington on its ear. Now imagine if there was 42 honest people there. Would that be a waste of your vote? I really don't think so. Now let's talk about why that is. Okay. There are a lot of things that are perfectly legal in Washington that are illegal in every other country in the world. And I'm going to talk about what those things are. Now, in Washington, if you're on a committee, if you're in Congress and you're on a committee and you're giving out military contracts, you are allowed to negotiate with those contractors as to how much they're going to donate to your campaign. You can be very open about it because there's nothing, they don't see anything wrong with it. It's not illegal in the United States to do that. So if there's a company producing an inferior product that's massively overpriced, you're allowed to give them the contract, but you're not going to do that unless they donate a hell of a lot of money to your campaign. And this is why politicians do this. In the United States, not anywhere else, but in the United States, it's perfectly legal to negotiate that way. Let's say a big company like Raytheon or Boeing wants that contract. They'll agree to donate $10 million to your campaign. Now, if you spend $1 million on your campaign, you're allowed to retain the other $9 million. And I don't mean retain as in for the next election. I mean retain as in it goes into your pocket. That is your money now. That is your money. Now you're giving out a lot of these contracts, so you're a millionaire, you can become a billionaire through your political career. You're allowed to retain the $9 million. It's not against the law. Now let's take it a step further. You can say to that company, I'll sweeten the deal. I'm going to take $5 million of my own personal money and I'm going to invest it in your company. I'm going to do this before it's announced that you have the contract. Okay? So, I invest $5 million. That helps you. I invest $5 million in your company. Then, it's announced that you've won the contract. Your stock value goes up 500%. At that point, I sell the stock, but your stocks remain high. You're set. You've got a government contract. I'm helping you with my own personal money. I make money off of it, but none of this is going to happen if you don't donate $10 million to my campaign. Well, of course the company's going to do it. There is no other way to get a contract. You could have the best product at the best price. you don't have a chance of winning a contract in Washington. You have to donate to their campaigns or you don't have a chance to get the contract. Frequently, the company with the inferior product that's overpriced will get the contract because they feel the need to bend over backwards because it's the only way to move their junk product, okay? That is how business is done in Washington. I'm including a link below that if you click on it, you'll see A.O.C. interviewing these very people involved. And they're very open about it. They're not even ashamed of it. You will see things in that video that I guarantee are worse than what I just said. And I'm saving that because I would rather understate how bad things are. That way, when you see the people you voted for admitting this stuff, you'll be shocked because you're going to find out it's worse than what I just said. So I encourage you to check out the links below. Now, this is a broken system. It's totally dishonest. And you'll notice that Democrats and Republicans are in lockstep in regard to unnecessary military spending. Now, the United States of America, geographically, it's impossible to invade. If all the countries in the world got together, they still couldn't invade the United States. So to spend trillions of dollars on unnecessary military spending kind of makes you wonder. But you really don't need to wonder. This is a way of transferring money out of the middle class. The middle class pays all the taxes in the United States. Transfer money out of the middle class to the upper class. The upper class, they run it, they own it, okay? Makes them billionaires. You pay for it. If you see that as bad, there's something you can do about it. You don't have to vote Republican or Democrat. If you're leaning to the right, you can vote for the Libertarian Party. Oh, but voting for an honest person is a wasted vote. No, it's not. Okay? If you're leaning to the left, you can vote for the Green Party. Oh, but that's a wasted vote. No, it's not. Okay? One honest person in Congress is going to do more for you than all the other ones combined. The other ones do not have your best interests at heart. They are not telling the truth. They've already planned the elimination of the middle class. If that's you, why would you vote for them? Isn't that like the prisoners of a jail voting for the warden? Why would the prisoners of a jail want to vote for the warden? Why would you want to vote Republican or Democrat? You're voting for the establishment, okay? When President Obama was elected, okay, the bankers, okay, the bankers came in, Goldman Sachs, that's the name I'm trying to think of. Goldman Sachs represents all the big bankers. They are the interface between the bankers and the administration. Goldman Sachs comes in, they give Obama a list of all the people he's going to appoint to his cabinet. They say, well, you know, you can take one of the minor ones and appoint somebody you want. We want to maintain the illusion that there's a democracy in this country, but we expect you to do everything we say. That's what we agreed upon. Had you not agreed to that, you wouldn't be president now. He's, I understand completely. Tell me who my cabinet's going to be. And he appointed every one of those with the exception of a minor one so as to maintain the illusion of democracy. Had a Republican won, it would have been exactly the same. Goldman Sachs, on behalf of the bank, they appoint the cabinet. They come in every month, give the administration the instructions on what they're going to do. If you are voting for a Republican or a Democrat, you are voting for the big banks. They run the United States. They own it. They own you. Okay? You're a slave. If you don't know it, I tell you. You got some money. Maybe you got a little bit of money, so you're a field slave. Maybe you're a doctor or a lawyer. Okay, well then you're a house slave. But you're still a slave. You don't have any trace of democracy in your country whatsoever, and you have not had since World War II. Now maybe you went to school and you remember Operation Paperclip. Okay, all the smartest Nazis, the most valuable Nazis, Wernher von Braun invented the rockets. They needed him so America could go to the moon. 1,600 Nazis, they put a paperclip in their file. These Nazis never had to go to Nuremberg. They came to the United States and took top jobs in government. Okay, this is just a known fact. I'm backing up everything I say here today. Alright, what happens when you put a superior life form in an ecosystem that has no experience with that life form whatsoever, okay? Well, no American politician's ever been accused of being smart. Nazis are terrible people, but they are smart. Put 1,600 of them in top jobs all over the United States, and guess what? You got the Fourth Reich now. People think America won the war. Forget that idea. You got the Fourth Reich since World War II. They completely took over, and that's the way it is. If you don't know that, then what you don't know is a lot, okay? They completely took over. Now, what is fascism? Okay, well, fascism is when you have the government, the media, and industry all on the same page, okay? They never saw a war they didn't like. Government says, oh, Iran sponsors terrorism. All the media goes along, oh, Iran sponsors terrorism. Nobody gives an argument to the contrary. Nobody challenges it. Nobody questions anything. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like what you see in America every day? Well, that's what you have. You've had that since World War II. This is a perfect fascist society. I don't want to call it a nation because the USA is more of a business than a nation, okay? And it goes well beyond its borders. You can take Saudi Arabia, Israel, the USA. That is one business. There are no nations there. There is no democracy there. These are owned and operated by the big banks, and that's it. It is not a nation, it is a business. Okay, if you don't like that idea, then stop voting for Republicans and Democrats, okay? Now, if you're a billionaire in the United States and you have two kids, one of them's smart, one of them's stupid, okay? You say to the smart kid, you're going to learn the business, you're going to take over someday, you're a chip off the old block, you're going to run the whole show. Well, that makes him feel good. You say to the stupid kid, son, you're going into politics. That's the way it is. You're going into politics, do what you're told. I tell you what, when you're done, you'll have more money than your brother. What do you think of that? Gee, thanks, Dad, that's terrific. And that's the way it works. That's how it is. If you don't understand something, son, ask the person next to you. He'll fill you in, she'll fill you in. It's easy. Do what you're told, take the money. It'll be a great and easy life for you. You can feel good about it. You made America a better place. It's all good. Stay positive and enjoy the ride. And that's how it is. These are the children of the elite. They are the Democrats and the Republicans. They run Washington, but they don't have any real power, okay? The banks give them their instructions. They follow the instructions. That's how it works. They become enriched. Everybody's happy, except you, okay? You get the bill for it. Your democracy is forfeit. It's gone, okay? You need to try and get it back. Oh, but you've heard that voting for an honest person is a wasted vote. Well, let me tell you, people can say whatever they want. The problem is you believing it. That's the problem, okay? If half the people in the United States stopped voting for the Democrats and the Republicans, they voted for an honest third or fourth party, that party would win the whole show, all right? Now, ballot box stuffing aside, I mean, you've got some serious ballot box stuffing going on in the United States. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's a perfect example of it. And when Nancy Pelosi is giving a speech, who's standing right beside her? Well, it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That tells you how corrupt your system is, all right? Forget about any idea that the Democrats are better than the Republicans or vice versa. It's not so. It's been said that they're one party pretending to be two parties. I really can't give them credit for being even one party, because if you're a political party and you get elected, well, you get to choose your own cabinet. Well, not so in the United States. If you're a political party and you won the election, you get to bring in what bills you want to bring in. It goes to Congress. There's a vote. If you have a majority, you win. It doesn't work that way at all in Washington. Not even close. But the people who say it's one party pretending to be two parties, well, they do have a point. They're in lockstep in all things economic, but they pretend to be different, okay? The Republican Party has no history at all of being pro-life, quite the opposite. But they've embraced pro-life, not seriously, but they've embraced it to differentiate themselves from the Democrats. Being pro-life doesn't cost them a penny, okay? The Democrats have no history at all of supporting LGBTQ. Zero, quite the opposite. They are a highly bigoted party. They are not a compassionate party, but they embrace it. Why? Well, it doesn't cost them a penny at all. And it differentiates them from the Republicans. They don't want people to notice that in regard to trillions of dollars in unnecessary military spending, they're in lockstep. They've never seen a war they didn't like. The U.S. media has never seen a war they didn't like. U.S. industry has never seen a war they didn't like, and that's fascism. Look it up in the dictionary. Okay, that is perfect fascism. You got the Fourth Reich, and the only way you're ever going to get rid of it is by voting for a third or fourth party. Now let's get back to Iran for a second. Now let's assume that Saudi Arabia organized the false flag operation. They're pretending to be Iran, and they're mining, you know, all of this so that the world will think Iran did it, and then they can destroy Iran. Well, obviously Iran doesn't want to get destroyed. They didn't do it. It would probably be Saudi Arabia. And I'll tell you why. Japan is a crucial ally of Iran. Japan kind of surprised the world when they said, we're going to keep buying Iranian oil, and the U.S. is going to sanction us, and it's going to hurt us, but no matter how much it hurts us, we're going to keep buying Iranian oil, and we're going to keep buying it, and we're going to sustain Iran through this crisis, and no matter how much it hurts us, we're going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Damn, you just don't see that every day. I was not expecting that at all. So Japan is a crucial ally of Iran, for sure. Now, Saudi Arabia hates the fact that Japan is doing this. And bear in mind, Saudi Arabia is not too smart. So they're mining these waters, and they're attacking different ships. Hey, let's attack Japan. We're pretending to be Iran. Hey, we got to attack the ship. This is a golden opportunity to attack Japan. So they attack the Japanese oil tanker. Now, they want the world to believe that Iran is doing this, right? You think Iran's going to attack a Japanese oil tanker when Japan is one of the only countries in the world that's going to keep Iran going? You really think that Iran would come up with that idea? That level of stupidity could only come from Saudi Arabia. So you can be sure Saudi Arabia is very much involved. Of course the United States is involved. They know darn well Iran is not mining those waters. They certainly know that Iran would never attack a Japanese oil tanker. I mean, seriously, give your head a shake if you think Iran is going to attack Japan right now. Everything about that is what Saudi Arabia wants. Everything about that is bad for Iran. Iran has always been known as the smart nation in the Middle East. Okay, they have outwitted other nations. They have outwitted the USA. Somehow they've been able to maintain their independence. They had a democracy back in the 50s. That was snuffed out by the CIA. The Shah of Iran, the brutal dictator, was put into power. USA was happy. But then they had the revolution and they got their country back. And the United States has been trying to destroy Iran ever since. Okay, people who know how the world works have been watching that over the years. It just is that way. Why they're so hell-bent on destroying Iran? I mean, they get enough graft from Saudi Arabia. Do they really need graft from Iran? Well, apparently so. So they want dictatorship back in Iran. They want total control. They want absolute control. These fascists, they can never have enough control. They want more. I just want to share this with you. Again, we came within 10 minutes of a war that would have resulted in 1 million or more civilian deaths. Do you really want that on your conscience? Okay. If you're an American, you pay taxes, okay. You're going to see every man, woman, and child dead in Yemen just so the Saudis can have an ego trip, all right? That's bad enough. You want to see 1 million people dead in Iran? Is that what you're about? Okay, is it because they have brown skin, they're Muslim, you just want to see them all dead? I don't think that's what you're about. That might be what U.S. politicians are about. Maybe 1/3 of the United States does feel that way, but I don't think you do. If you did, you wouldn't be watching this video. So I hope I've given you some food for thought. Okay, Iran had nothing to do with the mining of the Strait of Hormuz. That was a false flag effort to justify an attack on Iran. Iran would have nothing to gain from doing that. And as far as attacking the Japanese vessel, well, that was just a stupidity on a level that only Saudi Arabia would be capable of. So I'm going to leave that with you. My name is Scott McGurn, and thank you for your time.